once again to I've Got Your Six from CopBLue. Before we get started, I wanted to once again remind you that we at CopBLue support Chase. For those of you who are trying to get him off the Paw Patrol, shame on you. As I always often do, I start my program by saying a quick saying from Marcus Aurelius, and today's is, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself in your way of thinking. And a lot of that has to do with humor. And today, I gotta be honest, it's the funniest SOB I've ever met in my life. His name is Andy Locklair, longtime policeman here in our county. You're an entertainer, you do all kinds of cool stuff. You went to Europe, I understand, and did some stuff over there.
Let me tell you something, crime don't pay on either side of the fence, so you gotta find a part-time gig. And I found entertaining was my forte. I enjoyed doing it and just like to see people laugh.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So tell us about yourself. I mean,
Well, I was born and raised in a small community. I was born here in 1969 on June the 14th and right here in Darlington. And I grew up like everybody else did, went to the local high school, played sports, enjoyed life. We had an auto mechanic shop, record service, and all my family was first responders in the rescue squad or fire department, those kind of things. And I decided at 21, a friend of mine had put in an application with the police department and was going to get a job. And I'm thinking, well, if he can do that, why can't I do that? And my mother, God rest her soul, she died about 2 months prior to that, and always made me promise her I would get a job where I wore a tie to work instead of getting my hands dirty on a car or a record driver and that kind of thing. So police department had nice pretty ties on the uniforms, and I went and put an application in, and a couple of days later, Redmond Kelly, old street sergeant that we had back in the day that trained a lot of us, came by the tire shop in which I was working and said, hey, they want to hire you. So I went to work, and I was 21 years old and had just turned 21 years old and got into this institution and absolutely, positively loved it. People couldn't understand how, because I was the class clown, I was the jokester, I was the beer joint picker, those kind of things, how I got a job, had to shave the beard off and cut the hair to go into law enforcement. But that was it. The story in a nutshell, and I've done it for the better part of 25 years and really like what I did.
I've been laughing at you for years. I gotta be honest with you. You're just so funny.
Well, in doing this job, there's more. People ask me, I do comedy. So I started doing stand-up comedy at different clubs and started doing that. Then I turned it into a corporate thing, do a lot of clean comedy and no blue comedy. And people's always asking, where do you get your material? Being a cop is the best place in the world to get material for a comedy show because it's so funny. I tell a bit on stage when I was a cop. I got a DUI, the first one I ever got, and the guy beats me in the back of his car. Back then he used to do that, and he's staggering and he's like, I'm drunk, take me to jail. I'm like, hang on a second, I got to go through all these things. I just can't take you to jail. So how much have you had to drink? He said, well, I had a six pack this morning and a fifth of liquor this afternoon, and we drank a keg just a little while ago. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to put you on the breathalyzer. He's like, why? Don't you believe me? Of course that never happened as a joke, but it's funny things like that and dealing with the stress of the everyday stress of this job. It's an outlet. Some guys go off to a shooting range and shoot. I never was a gun guy. Some guys go to the gym and work out. You can tell I'm about 8 pounds overweight. I never was a gym guy. But I was a funny guy.
Right.
And you can find humor in doing that, because if you don't find humor in doing that, it'll run you crazy. And a lot of law enforcement know what I'm talking about. Suicide rate is so high now this day and time with this institution, with this job, and it's a pretty tough deal. So finding an outlet to be able to do that is one thing I've discovered. I did with music, I did with comedy, and it kind of works out.
So there's just a couple of different things that I can delve from what it is that you're saying, but it's so important for us to find an outlet. I mean, I'm a runner. That's what I do. I like to run. I mean, I do races and law enforcement memorial runs and things like that. I'm not really funny, but you are, and you enjoy that, and it's really kind of helps you to alleviate that stress.
I really do. I enjoy people being happy.
Right.
Because you deal with the mundane situation on a daily basis in this career of people not happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's either a death, an auto accident, a fire, somebody's lost property, somebody's stolen from them, they're a victim of a circumstance. And not at all times is it appropriate to go in with, hey, why did the chicken cross the road? There should have possibly could be done. I mean, you can't go in with a joke all the time. But you can go in with an attitude, mindset,
Right.
that I'm not gonna be super cop with the mirror glasses on, all the leather shining. I can go in and be a human, and a human can go in different situations and use their outlet, their talent, or their gift to be able to, number one, defuse a situation. Number two, show compassion and understanding about a situation and try to get things calmed down to where you can make things happen without pulling a weapon or without going to those extremes and doing that. And I equate it to common sense law enforcement.
Right.
And just having common sense to know that, yes, I'm here to do a job, but I need to do that job with critical thinking and common sense. And I think we lack some of that this day and time.
I do too.
And I feel like we need to, I know, we're in a day and time that's so volatile and looking at past situations and looking at the history of this country. But I think sometimes we need to learn from the history of this country. I think sometimes we can go back to some of the history in this country and realize that we did things a certain way and it worked.
Right.
Was all of it right? No, some of it was probably wrong, but there was good, talented people that wanted to serve. And now it's turned into where it's just a job.
Well, I agree with you, and I think so many people have been driven from the profession by political patronage. I think far too many chiefs and upper echelon folks are put in positions now because of political patronage. It has nothing to do with their ability to make a place better. I mean, I truly do. I think there's a lot of that's just bad management, in my opinion.
Go ahead. Critical situations, partisan politics has no place in police.
Absolutely.
It can't be. It has to be. The branch of government which you serve, the executive branch, you have to take politics out of it, and you can't have it. And when you start putting partisan politics inside of law enforcement, you're going to start having the issues that we're having today. And we've got a job to do, and that job is to make sure we do exactly what we're sworn in to do, and that's to go out and uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and make sure that we do exactly what we're supposed to do and cover everything we're supposed to cover and make sure people are safe.
And feel safe.
And feel safe.
And feel
right.
safe.
You can do that. We can do that with compliance. You see the videos on Facebook all the time. Why do I have to give you my driver's license? Listen, it's a common thing. I've stopped you. Let me see your driver's license. We get this going and be safe. Have common sense.
Right.
And handle the situation like it needs to be.
I agree. And I hesitate to say this if I'm going to anyway. It's like, it's just this, I don't know if it's a political agenda or if it's what exactly, but when you'll have, especially certain political figures who will say things that are just an out and outright lie. That it has nothing to do with the truth.
That's right.
And they end up saying things about, it's popular right now among certain politicians to hate the police and say how bad they are and all this kind of stuff. And there's no truth to it. There's no reality to it, whatever. Do bad things happen in law enforcement? Absolutely. Bad things happen everywhere. And in all professions, but to continually use that to hammer us down, take money from our budgets, and so on and so forth, I think is just ridiculous.
I equate it to going to a local restaurant or going to a national chain, walk in and get a bad waitress that can't get your order right, that doesn't bring you your unsweet tea instead of sweet tea, that gets the steak wrong when you wanted it medium rare and you got it well done. You can't go out and shut the whole chain of restaurants down because of one waitress. You've got to realize that it's people doing a person job. So you've got to get the right talent in there. And when you start having small problems, then you got to deal with those problems with those particular individuals so that you don't have those issues to fester up and keep going. Everybody looks at Minnesota and they say, oh, it's a terrible deal. And I'm a law enforcement officer. This guy should be in jail.
I agree.
I hate it. But he should have never acted this way. But my thing is, let's look at the leadership. Let's go back before this incident happened. Let's find out what's going on with this and why do we have that leadership in place to allow a person like this to. And I'm all for the memory of George Floyd. I'm all for marching against this dude, this person.
Right.
But when you turn this guy's legacy into looting and burning down things and turning it into what it is, it takes away all of that.
I agree.
And it's so sad because it's a sad situation is what it is. There's bad cops. We know that. There's bad cops out here, and we strive daily to find, just like we do the criminal, we strive daily to find the bad cops and weed those guys out, because there's a lot of responsibility with this job, and you can't have someone that can't make good decisions.
I agree with you, and I think that a lot of people's approach to it that are folks that have the opportunity to change things, they're taking a 10-penny nail and they're trying to drive it in with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
It's not the right tool.
It's not.
So let's move away from that for just a second.
Okay.
2 questions.
Uh-huh.
What's the funniest prank you've ever pulled, and what's the funniest prank you've ever had pulled on you? I'm hoping you'll come up with some good ones, because I know they got to be good.
So the funniest prank I think we ever pulled, Ricky caught at the city of Darlington.
Oh, I know this story.
Yeah. And we went in and we found a door unlocked, a local department store, and went in and found a mannequin. And this mannequin we took and climbed, and this is like 1990, so we're way past any kind of trouble. We climbed up on a local bank near an alley, and we called this guy for a property check behind this bank. And as he was coming down the alleyway in his patrol car, we threw the mannequin onto his car. That was hilarious.
We didn't get fired.
Oh my gosh. Third shift, back then, third shift didn't have a whole lot going on. Roy Williams was big about checking property and walking a beat. We actually got out and walked a beat at 2 o'clock in the morning, checking door handles, and it got a little mundane, a little boring. So I was able to help pull off that prank. And then the funniest prank ever pulled on me.
What did the guy do when you threw the door?
Oh man, he hit brakes on the car, got out, and he thought somebody had jumped off that bank and onto his car. Luckily, we didn't damage the car. He didn't run into anything. But it was awful funny. It really was. I think the funniest prank ever pulled on me, the former chief, and God rest his soul, Jay Cox of the city of Darlington, at the time was an investigator. Back then, we had an investigator on each shift, and we were working third shift one night, and was always jabbing at one another. Jay was a funny guy in his own right, but it was always a joke or a jab with him. I was a new kid, just walked the North Beat and got back to my car, and everybody was around my car. And we parked at the corner on the square in the city of Darlington, a little small town. And they was like, hey, what do you think about going and getting something to eat down at Steve's One Stop, which is a local place, was open all night. And I'm like, gosh, they're inviting me to go. This is nice. I'm kind of getting in with the crowd. Yes, let's go. Well, I got in my 1987 Ford Patrol car. When you put the keys in an 87 Ford Patrol car and you crank it up, it's about a 2-second delay before the air conditioning works, before it starts blowing. And I put the key in, and 2 seconds later, it's like poof, I can't see anything. They had taken Old Navy snuff from the store, about 3 cans of this stuff, very fine Old Navy snuff, and poured it into the air conditioning ducts of that patrol car. And when that wind came on, it's like flour. It blowed everywhere. And I'm sitting there trying not to I'm laughing right along the rest of them. Jay is riding around the courthouse square, and all you can hear him is laughing. It's so funny. It was so bad. They felt so bad about it. I'll help me clean the car out later. But that was probably the funniest prank I ever played on me. So.
That is too funny.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you had an opportunity to work with a lot of different people in your career, and I guess I wanted to ask this question because I know who mine is, but who was your favorite sheriff and why?
You know what? I worked under 2 sheriffs the whole time I was there. Under Glenn Campbell, I left the City Police Department in '91. I went to work out there with him. He knew my mother. She was actually a dispatcher before he went to the 911 system. He was a family friend, and Glenn Campbell was a great guy. Wayne Bird was a sheriff after him. With Wayne, I was promoted to a captain over administration. I got to learn a lot. I got to see a lot. They're 2 totally different guys. Both are great guys in their own right. Both guys have a place in my heart for being a good person. But Glenn Campbell, man, he was just, every time I see him, I say, there's my sheriff. Because I spent so much time, we went a period of 5 years at that sheriff's office. We didn't lose anybody. And nobody left. And for 5 years, I was a deputy under Glenn Campbell. And, a good sheriff should be 50% cop and 50% politician.
Right.
And Glenn was about 80% cop and 20% politician, or what he wanted you to think he was, when he was really about 80% politician, 20% cop. Either way, he was 100% man. He was a good guy. And I would go do parties and do comedy shows, especially locally where people knew him. And Sheriff Campbell has a unique way of talking. He's almost like Floyd and Barber off Andy Griffith's show. And I would take off on him, and people were like, oh my gosh, you got to do Glenn, you got to do Glenn. And every time we would do an event that he was there, he, look in, don't do me tonight, man. Go do somebody else, don't do me. Go pick on somebody else. So he'd get a little red face about it every now and again. But it was all done in love,
Right.
And in jest. But I'd say Glenn ranks up there. He's a great guy. He served 20 some years as a sheriff of Darlington County, and I call it the golden years. Before that, it was turmoil and problems dating back to the 50s into the 60s and 70s. And Glenn came in 1984 and changed and cleaned up a lot of that, and really got a lot of respectability in law enforcement for Darlington County.
Well, the reason I ask is, we have a wide audience that's all across the United States, as well as to a few foreign countries as well. And, I think what our audience is looking for in this particular question is, why is he the best? What made him the best? What can other leaders do to emulate him to be as good a sheriff?
It's common sense approach to being a neighbor. If you go back and look at history, the sheriff of a community was elected by his peers to take care of law and order. That was his primary job, was to take care of law and order, and then handle the civil papers and all the things that sheriff's offices do when it comes to bad debt and things of such, and serving writs and serving papers and serving those orders. Taking a common sense approach, and not only Glenn, but Wayne did the same thing. It's going out and being proactive. It's going out and being invested in your community. It's going out and being a part of and wanting to see a community strive. It's not just having a job, it's having a mission. And I think a lot of folks, no matter what big city you live in, no matter what small community you live in, you may have a department that has 6,000 people working in an annual budget of $2.5 billion a year, or you may have a department with just 3 guys and you're the chief of that small town. It's the same concept. It's different burdens, but it's having the same concept of having common sense approach to law enforcement. You're not king. You're the chief, or you're the sheriff. You're the say-all to the rest and civil obedience in a community. That's a huge responsibility, and it's a lot of power there. You have the power, you have the means, you have the know-how, you have the confidence of the people that hired you in that particular community, whether you were elected or appointed by a city council or mayor, to go out and do the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing might not be the popular thing to do.
I agree.
But it's the right thing to do. So I would encourage everyone out there that has a leadership job, do the right thing. We're riddled this day and time, and this institution is getting riddled with defunding and people and all the talent leaving, the retirement rate, and people taking early retirement, record numbers.
Oh yeah.
Blue flu, walking out.
Yep.
Atlanta, we're seeing big problems down there. Don't be pressured because the political process of this whole thing gets you elected if you're a sheriff. But understand, you've got to be a lawman, and there's a fine line to walk there between politics and law, and take partisan politics out of it. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. Just do the right thing. Do what is right by God, do what is right by your community, and do what is right by yourself. And I promise you, at the end of the day, no matter how much stress you got on you that office, you better lay your head down there now.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So, my last question for you.
Go ahead.
Do you feel like that humor has saved your life because of the pressures you've been under as a law enforcement officer? I know you've seen a lot of death and mayhem and discontent.
You go out and do the job 12 hours a day, 8 hours a day, as a detective or investigator for 10 years. You go out and see the worst of the worst.
Yes.
Suicide, you see death, you see murders, you see kids, auto accidents. You see this stuff on a daily basis. Now you can take all that stuff, package it up, put it in your heart, and take it home. And hunt you a divorce attorney, hunt you a bankruptcy attorney, hunt you a substance abuse attorney, or counselor if you get that far with it. Or you can get rid of it with an outlet. You can go in there, find humor in everything. Find a way not to take that stuff and harbor it. A lot of times you work these cases and you get so mad, so upset, you can't believe the waste of time for a lot of this stuff. But you got to realize that you've got a victim, you've got a suspect. Suspect needs to be in jail. Victim needs to be consoled. And sometimes the best way to do that is to bring some humor to the table. And again, there's a time and a place when it's appropriate to do that, but be able to have that sense of humor to where when you're not dealing with a suspect or a victim and you're dealing with just Joe Public, you're able to go up, tell a joke, make them laugh, and be a human being. And in order to do that, so you're not so robotic in doing this job. You know, the Hollywood, I love it because they put the how we're supposed to act as cops.
Yeah.
They write this stuff down. It's some guy that's a writer that's never been a cop in his life.
Yeah.
And they hire consultants, and the consultant goes to work getting all this big money, thinking this is what they want. But when it's all said and done, and you take the uniform off, you're just a human. You're just another guy in the neighborhood. And don't be the hall monitor guy. You know, just go be the human guy. Go be the guy that's there to help. Stop and change the time. Stop and help someone. Stop and buy someone lunch one day. Don't look for all of the return. Go pay it forward kind of thing. Go put some. If you'll invest yourself into your community, I promise you it'll pay dividends later.
I agree with that 100%. You got to be part of the community. You can't do that locked behind the door.
Can't do it. You can't do it locked behind the door. You can't go to work, let this stuff shut you down to the point when you get off work that you're like, the heck with everybody, I'm just going to go home. You know, you've got to be human, and that's the hard part about it. You know, we have soldiers go over to overseas. I know you went to overseas when you served in the Marines, and you come back home and we have huge problems with post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's prevalent in law enforcement as well.
I would agree.
But we see the suicide rate going through the roof right now because all the pressure and stress of doing this job. So again, circling back around to the first part of this thing, have that outlet and be able to do it. You can do that with humor. I mean, listen, when you can see somebody's teeth and they're smiling, they can't hate you that much, you know?
I
It's
agree
really
with you.
funny.
And you know, one of the good points that you made about traveling overseas and being in a combat zone. What a lot of people don't understand is the fact that when you come back from overseas, when you've left that war behind, and trust me, I understand some of it comes back with you, but as a law enforcement officer, you never take your pack off. You're in that combat zone your entire career. And most of the time in your entire life, even though I know that you still do some law enforcement and I'm retired, I mean, you still carry it with you. So I totally understand that. Well, thank you so much for coming and being a guest for us on CopBLUE's I Got Your Six. And remember, folks, the most important thing you can do every day is hit that clock and go home safe. Good job, man.
Brandon, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome work, man. Very good.